I'm standing in the parking lot of a vineyard in Napa Valley, my hands gripping the steering wheel even though the engine is already off. 7 hours. I drove 7 hours from San Francisco to get here. My lower back aches from the drive, and there's a stiffness in my shoulders that won't release. But none of that matters because I'm finally here, at my son's wedding. I haven't seen Dominic in person for 3 months, not since that brief, awkward lunch in April where Tessa spent the entire time on her phone and Dominic kept checking his watch. But today is different. Today is his wedding day, and I'm determined to be present for it in every possible way. I check my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. My silver blonde hair is still perfectly in place, despite the long drive, swept back in an elegant chignon that cost $200 at the salon yesterday. The Armani pantsuit I'm wearing is a soft champagne color, carefully chosen to be beautiful without upstaging the bride. I'm 57 years old, and I've learned how to dress for occasions that matter. My makeup is subtle but polished. I look like what I am, a successful woman who has her life together even when that's not entirely true. The vineyard is stunning. Rolling hills covered in neat rows of grapevines stretch in every direction under the June sun. The main building is this beautiful stone structure with ivy climbing up the walls, exactly the kind of place you'd see in magazines. Tessa has good taste, I'll give her that. Of course, good taste is easier when someone else is paying for it. The wedding venue alone cost $45,000, not including catering, flowers, or any of the other expenses that somehow kept appearing on the invoices I've been receiving for the past 6 months. I grab my purse from the passenger seat and the beautifully wrapped gift from the back. Inside the silver paper is a set of Baccarat crystal champagne flutes, engraved with their names and wedding date. $800. Not the most expensive gift I've given Dominic over the years, not even close, but it felt appropriate, elegant, meaningful. My heels click on the stone pathway as I walk toward the main entrance. There's a circular fountain in the courtyard, with water trickling gently over carved stone. I can hear music coming from somewhere inside, classical strings playing softly. My heart is beating faster than it should be. I'm nervous. That realization bothers me. I'm Eleanor Hartwell. I've negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. I've presented to boards of directors who would tear apart any sign of weakness. I've built a financial consulting firm from absolutely nothing into a company valued at $12 million. But the thought of seeing my son get married makes my palms sweat. I reach the main door and press the ornate brass doorbell. The sound of it echoes inside. I wait, straightening my jacket, making sure the gift is positioned properly in my hands. I'm smiling already, preparing my face for the moment I see him. The door opens. Dominic is standing there in shorts and a t-shirt. Not a tuxedo, not a suit. Shorts, Nike athletic shorts, and a faded Stanford t-shirt that I'm pretty sure I bought him 4 years ago. His hair is messy, uncombed. He's holding a bottle of beer even though it's only 2 in the afternoon. And the expression on his face when he sees me isn't joy or welcome or even neutral surprise. It's amusement. "Mom," he says, and there's something in his tone that makes my stomach tighten. "What are you doing here?" The question doesn't make sense. I look past him, trying to see into the building. I can see the reception area, but there are no flowers, no decorations, no signs of a wedding about to happen. There are empty wine glasses on tables and what looks like deflated balloons in a corner. "The wedding," I say, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. "I'm here for your wedding, Dominic." He takes a sip of his beer, and I see it then. That look in his eyes that I've seen too many times over the past 16 years. It's the look that says he's about to hurt me, and some part of him is going to enjoy it. "Oh," he says, drawing out the word. "Oh man, Mom, I'm so sorry." But the wedding was yesterday. The words take a moment to process. They're English words. I understand each one individually, but together they don't make sense. Yesterday. The wedding was yesterday. I drove 7 hours today to get here today because the invitation said today. I can feel the weight of the invitation in my purse right now, pressed against my hip. "What?" It's all I can manage. "Yeah, we had to move it up a day. Last-minute thing with the venue." "Didn't you get the message?" He's still smiling, but it's not an apologetic smile. There's something else in it. Behind him, Tessa appears. She's wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her blonde hair in a messy ponytail. She's holding her phone, and the way she's holding it, angled slightly toward me, makes me realize she's recording this. She's recording me standing here in my expensive suit with my expensive gift after driving 7 hours to a wedding that happened yesterday. "Oh my God, Eleanor," Tessa says, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You didn't know? Dominic, you said you told her." "I thought I did," Dominic says, but his eyes say something different. His eyes say he knows exactly what he did. The heat rushes to my face. I can feel my cheeks burning. This is humiliation, pure and simple. This is deliberate. I want to scream. I want to demand an explanation. I want to ask why. I want to pull out my phone and show them the invitation right here, prove that it says June 15th, prove that I'm not crazy or forgetful or whatever narrative they're trying to create. But I've spent 35 years in business learning one critical lesson. Whoever loses their composure loses the negotiation. Whoever shows the wound first gives the other person the knife. So I smile. I smile the way I smile when a competitor tries to undercut me. I smile the way I smile when someone underestimates me in a boardroom. I smile with every bit of control I've spent decades perfecting. "That's okay, sweetheart," I say, and my voice is steady, calm, almost cheerful. "These things happen. Congratulations to you both." The confusion on Dominic's face is almost worth the pain in my chest. He expected tears. He expected me to break down, to beg for an explanation, to make a scene that Tessa could post on social media with some caption about crazy mothers-in-law. He expected drama. "You're not upset?" Tessa asks, and she's lowered her phone slightly. This isn't going the way she planned. "Of course not," I lie smoothly. "I'm just happy you two are married. I'll have to see the photos. I'm sure they're beautiful." I place the gift down on the stone ledge beside the door. "Here's your wedding present. I hope you enjoy it." Then I turn around and walk back to my car. My legs feel shaky, but I keep my posture straight, my head high, my pace measured. I will not run. I will not let them see me crumble. Not when Tessa is probably still recording, waiting for the breakdown that will get thousands of views and comments about entitled mothers. I reach my car, get in, close the door gently instead of slamming it. I put the key in the ignition. I back out of the parking space with perfect control. I drive down the long driveway at exactly the speed limit. I reach the main road. I turn left toward the highway. And then, only then, when I'm completely out of sight, do I pull over onto the shoulder. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the steering wheel. The tears come before I can stop them, hot and angry and full of 16 years of accumulated pain. I cry in a way I haven't cried since the divorce, great gasping sobs that make my whole body shake. 7 hours. I drove 7 hours. I cleared my entire schedule for this week. I declined a meeting with a potential client worth $2 million in annual contracts because I wanted to be present for my son's wedding. I spent $800 on crystal champagne flutes with their names engraved on them. I paid $45,000 for the venue. I've paid for everything, actually, every single expense for this wedding that I wasn't even invited to attend. No, that's not quite right. I was invited, but they changed the date on my invitation. They made sure I would drive all this way for nothing. The cruelty of it is breathtaking. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was calculated. This was designed to hurt me, to humiliate me, to make me feel small and unwanted and ridiculous. I sit there on the side of the road for 20 minutes, letting it all out. I cry for the little boy who used to beg me to read him bedtime stories. I cry for the 13-year-old who chose his father over me after the divorce. I cry for all the years I've spent trying to buy back his love with money, with generosity, with everything except the one thing he actually needed, which was my time and presence when he was growing up. But I also cry because somewhere in the past 16 years, that hurt little boy turned into a man who thinks it's acceptable to treat his mother this way, who thinks cruelty is justified because of old wounds that I can never heal, no matter how much money I transfer into his accounts. Eventually, the tears stop. They have to. You can't cry forever, even when you want to. I pull down the visor and look at myself in the mirror. My mascara has run in dark streaks down my face. My eyes are red and swollen. I look like a woman who's been destroyed, and I hate it. I open my glove compartment and pull out the pack of makeup wipes I always keep there. I clean my face methodically, removing every trace of tears, every smear of makeup. I reapply what I can with the cosmetics in my purse. I fix my hair. When I'm done, I look almost normal again. Composed. Together. I pull back onto the road and start the 7-hour drive back to San Francisco. The irony isn't lost on me. 14 hours of driving round trip for a wedding I never attended. That's going to be a great story to tell Vivian when I get back. The drive gives me too much time to think. I keep replaying the moment over and over, the look on Dominic's face, the way Tessa was recording, the casual cruelty of, "Didn't you get the message?" when they both knew perfectly well I hadn't. Why? That's the question that circles through my mind for miles and miles of highway. Why would he do this? I know he's angry with me. I know he blames me for the divorce, for not being there enough when he was growing up, for choosing my career over family time. But this level of vindictiveness seems like something more than just old resentment. And then, somewhere around San Luis Obispo, it hits me. The engagement dinner, 3 months ago. I missed the engagement dinner because I had an emergency meeting with my biggest client, a meeting that couldn't be rescheduled because the CEO was only in town for one day. I called Dominic and explained, promised I'd make it up to him. He said it was fine. His voice was cold, but he said it was fine. This is revenge. This is payback for missing that dinner. He made me drive 7 hours to experience the same disappointment I caused him, multiplied by 100. The pettiness of it is stunning. But what's even more stunning is my own role in creating this dynamic. Because if I'm honest with myself, truly honest, this isn't the first time I've prioritized business over Dominic. It's just the most recent in a very long pattern that started when he was small and has never really stopped. I've spent 16 years trying to compensate with money. Here's money for your apartment. Here's money for your startup. Here's money for your wedding. I thought I was showing love. But what if all I was really doing was confirming his worst belief about me, which is that money is the only language I speak? By the time I reach San Francisco, it's almost midnight. I'm exhausted. My body aches from the hours of driving, and my eyes feel like sandpaper. I pull into the garage of my condo building in Pacific Heights and sit there for a moment in the silence. My phone has been on silent the whole drive. I pull it out now and see 3 missed calls from Vivian and 2 text messages from her asking if I'm okay. Nothing from Dominic, nothing from Tessa, nothing from Richard, though I'm sure by now he's heard all about it and is probably thrilled that his son has finally put me in my place. I should go upstairs, take a shower, and go to sleep. Tomorrow I have meetings starting at 8. Life goes on. Business continues. That's always been my refuge. My safe place where I'm competent and respected and valued. But instead, I just sit there in my car in the dark garage, and I let myself feel the full weight of what just happened. Not just today's humiliation, but all of it. 16 years of failed attempts at reconciliation. 16 years of watching my son grow into a stranger. 16 years of paying and paying and paying for mistakes I made when he was young, mistakes I can never undo. And for the first time in a very long time, I wonder if maybe it's time to stop paying. I don't sleep that night. I lie in my bed staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift as cars pass by on the street below. My mind won't stop replaying everything, but not just what happened today. It goes back further to where all of this really started. 16 years ago, I was 41 years old, and my marriage was falling apart. Richard and I had been together for 15 years, married for 14 of them. From the outside, we looked perfect. He was a successful investment banker at Goldman Sachs, pulling in close to $700,000 a year. We had the house in Greenwich, the right country club membership, the perfectly decorated rooms that appeared in local magazines. We had Dominic, who was 13 and brilliant and beautiful. But inside our perfect life, I was suffocating. Richard wanted a wife who would organize charity galas and host dinner parties for his colleagues. He wanted someone who would be decoration on his arm, proof of his success. And for the first few years of our marriage, I tried to be that person. I really did. But I grew up poor. Not struggling middle-class poor, but actually poor. My father drove a delivery truck, and my mother cleaned houses, and there were months when we ate rice and beans for dinner because that's what we could afford. I swore when I was young that I would never depend on anyone else for financial security. I got scholarships, worked 3 jobs through college, and graduated with a degree in finance and a burning need to prove I could make it on my own. When Dominic was 8, I started my consulting firm. Just me, a laptop, and a spare bedroom converted into an office. I focused on helping mid-sized companies optimize their financial strategies, find inefficiencies, plan for growth. I was good at it, really good. Within 2 years, I had 5 employees and a client roster that kept expanding. Richard hated it. He didn't say it directly at first, but I could see it in the way his jaw would tighten when I mentioned a new client, or the way he'd make comments about me working late again. The arguments started small and grew bigger. He wanted me home for his business dinners. I had client presentations. He wanted me to volunteer at Dominic's school. I had meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. The truth is, I missed things. I missed a lot of things. I missed Dominic's soccer games because I was negotiating contracts. I missed school plays because I was on business trips. I missed dinners and bedtimes and lazy Sunday mornings because I was building something, creating security, making sure that I would never again be that little girl whose family couldn't afford new school clothes. Dominic was 13 when Richard asked for the divorce. We were in the kitchen, a beautiful kitchen with marble countertops that cost $40,000, and Richard told me he wanted out. He said I had become someone he didn't recognize. He said I cared more about my business than my family. He said Dominic needed a mother who was actually present. Each word felt like a knife, especially because part of me knew he was right. We tried mediation first, sitting in a sterile office while a neutral third party helped us divide up 15 years of marriage. Richard's lawyer pushed for primary custody of Dominic. My lawyer argued that I was perfectly capable of caring for our son, that my business success shouldn't be held against me. But then came the moment that changed everything. The mediator asked Dominic, 13 years old and already looking so much like his father, who he wanted to live with. I remember sitting there thinking he would choose me. He had to choose me. I was his mother. He looked at me across that conference table, and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Deep, settled disappointment, like he'd already given up on me a long time ago. "I want to stay with Dad," he said quietly. "In Greenwich. I don't want to have to move." Richard's lawyer immediately jumped on that, framing it as stability, continuity, keeping Dominic in his established school and social network. But I knew the real reason. Dominic chose Richard because Richard was there. Richard made it to the soccer games. Richard helped with homework. Richard was present in all the ways I wasn't. I could have fought it. My lawyer wanted me to fight it. But I looked at my son's face and I couldn't do it. I couldn't drag him through a custody battle when he'd already made his choice so clear. So I agreed. Dominic would live with Richard in Greenwich. I would have visitation rights, standard divorced parent arrangements, weekends, holidays, summers if he wanted. He never wanted the summers. I threw myself into work after that because it was the only thing that made sense. The business grew exponentially. We expanded to 15 employees, then 30, then 50. We opened an office in Boston, moved our headquarters there. My personal wealth grew from comfortable to substantial to genuinely impressive. By the time I turned 50, I had a net worth of over $10 million, and every single dollar felt like proof that I had made the right choices, even though my son barely spoke to me. The first year after the divorce, I tried so hard. I called Dominic every day. He rarely answered. I drove to Greenwich every weekend I could. He was always busy, or at a friend's house, or had plans with his father. I sent gifts for every occasion, thoughtful things that showed I was paying attention to his interests. They were acknowledged with brief thank you texts, nothing more. By the time Dominic was 15, I realized that Richard was actively working against me. Little comments Dominic would make gave it away. "Dad says you chose money over us. Dad says you were never really happy being a mom. Dad says you only visit out of guilt." Richard was poisoning my son against me, and there was nothing I could do about it because the worst part was that some of it was true. I had chosen my business. I had prioritized work. I was visiting out of guilt, so I changed tactics. If time and presence weren't options, if Dominic had already decided who I was, then maybe I could show my love in other ways. I started helping financially. When Dominic wanted to take a summer trip to Europe with friends before college, I paid for it. $12,000. When he got into Stanford, I paid his full tuition even though Richard could afford it. When he graduated and wanted to move to San Francisco to work in tech, I bought him a condo. $200,000 down payment on a place in Soma. Each time I helped, I felt like maybe we were connecting. He would call to thank me, we'd talk for a few minutes, and I'd hang up feeling like perhaps we were building something new. But then weeks would pass without contact, and I'd realize that the only time I heard from him was when he needed money. When Dominic was 26, he started a tech startup with 2 friends from Stanford. Some kind of app for optimizing food delivery routes. I never fully understood it. He called me, more animated than I'd heard him in years, and asked if I wanted to invest. He needed seed funding and was talking to various investors, but he thought of me first. I wrote a check for $250,000 that same week. Over the next 3 years, I invested another $400,000 as the company burned through capital. Dominic would send quarterly updates, business plans, projections that always showed profitability just around the corner. I knew enough about startups to see that the numbers didn't quite work, but I didn't care. This was my connection to my son. This was us building something together, even if I was just the bank. Then, 2 years ago, he called to tell me about Tessa. They'd met at some tech industry mixer in San Francisco. She came from money, old Connecticut family, he said. She understood the startup world. She was beautiful and smart, and he was in love. I was happy for him, genuinely happy. But I also felt a stab of fear because I knew what it meant. Another person between us. Another relationship where I'd be on the outside. I met Tessa for the first time at a dinner in San Francisco 6 months before the engagement. She was stunning in that very deliberate way, blonde and thin and dressed in clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was polite to me, almost excessively so, but there was something calculating in her eyes. She asked questions about my business, about my success, about my investments in Dominic's company. Each question felt like an appraisal. "You must be so proud of what you've built," she said at one point, her hand on Dominic's arm. "Dominic tells me you started from nothing." "My parents were working class," I said carefully. "I was lucky to have opportunities. And generous," Tessa added with a smile. "Dominic says you've been incredibly supportive of the startup. Not every parent would invest so much in their child's dreams." At the time, I took it as a compliment. Now I realize it was reconnaissance. She was calculating exactly how much she could extract from me. When Dominic called to tell me he was engaged, I cried. Happy tears, I told myself. My son was getting married. This was joyous news. But underneath the happiness was the familiar ache of not quite being included, of hearing about major life events through phone calls instead of being present for them. "Mom," Dominic said, and there was something almost warm in his voice. "I want you there. I want you to be part of this." "Of course," I said immediately. "Whatever you need." The thing is, Tessa's family isn't in the best financial situation right now. Her dad's company had some setbacks, so we're kind of on our own for the wedding expenses. And there it was, the real reason for the call. "I'd be honored to pay for your wedding," I said, meaning every word. This felt like an olive branch, a chance to be truly involved in something important to him. "Really?" He sounded genuinely pleased. "That's amazing, Mom. Thank you. Tessa's going to be so relieved." Over the next year, the invoices came steadily. $45,000 for the venue, $32,000 for catering, $18,000 for flowers, $8,000 for the photographer, $7,000 for the wedding cake. The numbers added up and up and up. Each time I got an invoice, I paid it immediately, no questions asked. The total reached $187,000. I didn't care about the money. I cared that I was contributing to my son's happiness, that I was part of something important in his life. Each payment felt like an investment in our relationship, proof that I loved him even if I hadn't always shown it the right way. 3 months before the wedding, I flew to San Francisco for the engagement dinner. I cleared my schedule completely, making sure nothing would interfere. But the day before I was supposed to fly out, my biggest client called with an emergency. Their CEO was in Boston for only 1 day and needed to meet immediately. This was a client worth $2 million in annual fees. If I didn't meet with them, we could lose the entire account. I called Dominic, my stomach churning with guilt. I'm so sorry, I said. There's an emergency with a client. I'll be there for the wedding, I promise. This dinner just isn't possible. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted too long. Sure, Mom, he finally said. Whatever, it's fine. Dominic, I really am sorry. This is important to me. I said it's fine. I have to go. He hung up before I could say anything else. I should have known then that something had shifted. I should have recognized the coldness in his voice as something more than ordinary disappointment. But I was too busy trying to save a client relationship to see that I was destroying the one that mattered most. That moment, I realize now, lying here in my bed in the middle of the night after driving 14 hours for nothing, that moment was when Dominic decided to hurt me back. 2 days after the wedding that I never attended, I'm sitting in my office in Boston trying to focus on a quarterly report when my phone buzzes. It's a text from Dominic. My heart actually jumps when I see his name on the screen. Maybe he's calling to apologize. Maybe he realizes how cruel the whole thing was. Maybe we can finally talk about what's really going on between us. I open the message. Mom, you forgot to pay for the wedding? I read it 3 times, then a 4th time. I must be misunderstanding. He can't possibly be asking what I think he's asking. Another message comes through before I can respond. The vendors are all asking for payment. I thought you were handling this. Can you transfer the money today? My hands start shaking. I set the phone down on my desk and stare at it like it's something dangerous. He made me drive 7 hours to humiliate me at a wedding that happened the day before, and now he wants me to pay $187,000 for that privilege? Vivian Chen knocks on my office door and walks in without waiting for an answer. She's been my best friend and business partner for 12 years, the only person who knows the full truth about my relationship with Dominic. She takes one look at my face and closes the door behind her. What happened? She asks. I hand her my phone without saying anything. She reads the messages, and her expression goes from concerned to absolutely furious in about 3 seconds. You have got to be kidding me, she says. He's actually asking you to pay for the wedding? After what he did? Apparently, I managed to say. Vivian sits down in the chair across from my desk. She's wearing one of her typical power suits, navy blue with her black hair cut in a sharp bob. She looks like she's ready to murder someone, and right now, that someone is probably my son. Eleanor, she says carefully, what are you going to do? That's the question, isn't it? What am I going to do? The old Eleanor, the Eleanor who has spent 16 years trying to buy back her son's love, would transfer the money immediately. She would apologize for the delay, ask if there's anything else needed, and try to smooth everything over. But something happened to me during that 7-hour drive back from Napa. Something broke, or maybe something finally healed. I'm not sure which. I need you to do something for me, I tell Vivian. I need you to pull together a complete financial report of every dollar I've transferred to Dominic in the last 5 years. Every investment in his company, every gift, every payment. I want dates, amounts, everything. Vivian's eyebrows go up. Okay, she says slowly. Can I ask why? Because I need to see it. All of it. I need to understand exactly what I've been doing. She nods and stands up. I'll have it for you by end of day. After she leaves, I pick up my phone and type out a response to Dominic. I don't remember agreeing to pay for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. I delete it without sending. Too emotional. Too revealing. I try again. We should discuss this in person. Delete. That gives him too much control over the conversation. Finally, I type, did you actually change the date on my invitation? I stare at those words for a long time before I delete them too, because I already know the answer, and asking the question just makes me look weak. Instead, I write, I'll call you later, and then I turn my phone off completely. The rest of the day passes in a blur of meetings and phone calls, but my mind isn't fully present. I keep thinking about that message, the sheer audacity of it, the assumption that I would just pay up like I always have, that humiliating me comes with no consequences whatsoever. At 6 o'clock, Vivian comes back into my office with a folder. She sets it down on my desk with a heavy thud. You're not going to like this, she says. I open the folder. Inside are spreadsheets, bank transfer records, investment documents. Vivian has organized everything chronologically with running totals. I start reading. Year 1 after the startup launch, $250,000 in seed funding. Year 2, $150,000 in additional investment. Year 3, another $200,000. Then there are the other transfers. $30,000 for his student loan payoff, even though he never asked me to do it. $50,000 when he said he needed to upgrade his car for client meetings. $25,000 for the condo renovation. $15,000 here, $12,000 there, $8,000 for this, $20,000 for that. The running total at the bottom of the last page makes my stomach turn. $847,600. I've given my son almost $1 million in 5 years. Jesus, I whisper. That doesn't include the wedding expenses, Vivian says quietly. Those invoices total another $187,340. So we're looking at just over $1.03 million in 5 years. I close the folder and push it away from me. I feel sick. Do you know how many times he's called me in those 5 years just to talk? I ask Vivian. Not to ask for money. Not because he needed something. Just to talk? How many? I honestly can't remember a single time. Every call, every text, every lunch meeting, it's always been about what he needs. And I told myself that was okay, that at least we were connecting, that money was how I showed love. But it wasn't love, Vivian. It was just enabling his complete lack of respect for me. What are you going to do? Vivian asks again. This time, I have an answer. Find out exactly what happened with that wedding date. I want proof. It takes Vivian exactly 45 minutes to get me what I need. She has a friend whose sister works in event planning and knows someone at the Napa Vineyard. By 8 o'clock that night, I'm looking at email confirmations, booking records, and vendor contracts. The wedding was always planned for June 14th, not the 15th, the 14th. The venue was booked on that date 9 months ago and never changed. The catering was confirmed for the 14th. The flowers were delivered on the 14th. The photographer was scheduled for the 14th. But my invitation, the physical invitation that I received in the mail 6 weeks before the wedding, said June 15th. They printed a separate invitation just for me. They went to the effort and expense of creating a fake invitation with the wrong date so that I would show up a day late. This wasn't a miscommunication or a mistake. This was planned, deliberate, calculated cruelty. I also find out something else. The total cost of the wedding was $187,340. But Tessa's Instagram tells a different story. Over the past 9 months, she posted photos from the planning process. The dress fitting at Vera Wang in New York, the cake tasting at some exclusive bakery in San Francisco, the floral arrangements being designed. And in several of the photos, you can see other people. Tessa's mother, Tessa's bridesmaids, Tessa's friends. But in not a single photo, not one single image from 9 months of wedding planning, do I appear. I wasn't invited to help choose the dress. I wasn't included in any planning meetings. I wasn't part of the bridal shower that had 40 guests. I was only involved as the person writing the checks. Vivian sends me one more thing, a screenshot from Instagram that was posted on the wedding day and then quickly deleted, but her friend managed to grab it. It's a video, just a few seconds long. Tessa is with a group of her friends, all of them clearly tipsy, and one of them is saying something about when your mother-in-law finally learns she's not the main character. They all laugh, and Tessa raises her champagne glass and says, "Sometimes people need to be taught lessons about priorities." I watch that video 5 times. Each time, the rage builds a little higher. This wasn't about me missing one engagement dinner. This was about Tessa deciding I needed to be punished, and Dominic going along with it. Or maybe it was Dominic's idea, and Tessa enthusiastically participated. Either way, they both knew exactly what they were doing. I sleep better that night than I have in months. Not because I'm at peace, but because I've made a decision. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and the clarity of it is almost calming. The next morning, I call my lawyer. Her name is Patricia Morrison, and she's been handling my personal legal matters for 8 years. She's smart, ruthless when necessary, and completely unflappable. I need to know something, I tell her. If I verbally promised to pay for my son's wedding, but was then deliberately excluded from that wedding through deception, am I still legally obligated to pay? There's a pause on the other end of the line. This sounds like an interesting situation. Walk me through the details. I tell her everything. The promise to pay, The year of invoices, the changed invitation, the deliberate humiliation. When I'm done, she's quiet for a moment. First of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's incredibly cruel. Second, to answer your question, no, you're not legally obligated to pay. A verbal promise to pay for a wedding could theoretically be considered a binding agreement, but that agreement was contingent on certain implied conditions, one of which was that you would actually be invited to and able to attend the wedding. They deliberately prevented you from attending through fraudulent means. Any lawyer worth their salt would argue that invalidates the agreement. So if he tries to sue me, let him try. I'd be happy to represent you, and I promise you, we'd win. Do you have documentation of the changed invitation? I have the physical invitation they sent me with the wrong date, and I have proof from the venue that the wedding was always scheduled for the day before. Perfect. Keep all of that. If he does take legal action, we'll need it, but honestly, I doubt it will come to that. He'd have to admit in court that he deliberately deceived you, which doesn't look good for anyone. After I hang up with Patricia, I sit at my desk for a long time thinking. My phone has been buzzing periodically with messages from Dominic. I haven't read them. I'm not ready yet. Finally, I pick up my phone and open his messages. There are 7 of them, and they escalate from confused to annoyed to angry. Mom, did you see my message? Can you please respond? This is urgent. The vendors are threatening legal action. I need you to handle this. Mom, seriously, what is going on? This is ridiculous. You promised to pay for the wedding. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Call me back now. I read through all of them twice, and then I type out my response. I didn't tell you? 3 dots appear immediately. He's typing. Tell me what? I wait a full 5 minutes before responding. Let him sit with the anxiety for a moment. Let him wonder that I decided not to pay for the wedding. It must have slipped my mind. You know how these things go. Sometimes important information just doesn't get communicated properly. The 3 dots appear and disappear several times. I can imagine him staring at his phone, trying to figure out if I'm serious or if this is some kind of joke. Mom, you're joking, right? Why would I be joking? Because you promised. You said you'd pay for everything. Did I? I honestly can't remember making promises about a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. What are you talking about? You were invited. And there it is. He's going to try to gaslight me about the invitation. Interesting, I type. Because my invitation said June 15th, but the wedding was on June 14th. How do you explain that? This time the 3 dots don't appear. 1 minute passes, then 2, then 5. He's panicking now, trying to figure out how to explain the unexplainable. Finally, there was a miscommunication with the printer. I laugh out loud in my empty office. He's not even going to apologize. He's just going to lie. A miscommunication that only affected my invitation? How strange. Mom, please. The vendors are threatening to sue me. Tessa is freaking out. We can talk about whatever you think happened later, but right now I need you to pay these invoices. No. Just that one word. Simple, clean, final. What do you mean no? I mean I'm not paying for your wedding. You and Tessa can figure it out yourselves. My phone starts ringing immediately. It's Dominic. I decline the call. He calls again. I decline again. He calls a 3rd time, and I turn my phone off completely. I spend the rest of the day in meetings, and I'm more present and focused than I've been in weeks. That night, I go home and open a bottle of very expensive wine. I sit on my balcony overlooking Boston Harbor, and I drink it slowly, watching the lights reflect on the water. My phone is still off. I don't turn it back on until the next morning. When I do, there are 23 missed calls, 12 from Dominic, 7 from a number I don't recognize, 4 from Richard. Richard. Of course, Dominic called his father. Of course, he went running to Daddy to fix this, like he's been doing since he was 13 years old. There are also 15 text messages, but I don't read them yet. Instead, I get ready for work with meticulous care. I choose a black Armani suit, my favorite Tiffany pearl earrings, and my most expensive heels. I do my makeup flawlessly. I look at myself in the mirror, and I see a woman who has her life together, a woman who knows her worth, a woman who will not be manipulated anymore. At 9:30, my office phone rings. My assistant Margot's voice comes through the intercom. Eleanor, there's a Richard Hartwell on the line. He says he's your ex-husband and he needs to speak with you urgently. Of course he does. Put him through, I say. There's a click, and then Richard's voice fills my office. That same condescending tone that made me want to scream throughout 14 years of marriage. Eleanor, what the hell is going on? Dominic called me in tears saying you've abandoned him in a crisis. Have I? I say calmly. That's interesting. Tell me, Richard, how much are you contributing to Dominic's wedding expenses? That's not the point. You promised to pay for it. And you promised to love and cherish me until death do us part. But here we are. Promises get broken all the time. This is completely different, and you know it. Dominic is your son. Yes, he is. He's also a 29-year-old man who deliberately humiliated me at his wedding and then had the audacity to demand I pay for that humiliation. Tell me, Richard, did he mention that part? Did he tell you that he and Tessa changed the date on my invitation so I would drive 7 hours to arrive a day late? Silence on the other end of the line. Either Richard didn't know, or he did know and can't figure out how to defend it. Look, Richard finally says, I don't know anything about invitation dates. What I know is that Dominic is facing lawsuits from multiple vendors. His credit is going to be destroyed, and his mother, who has more money than God, is refusing to help him. Something snaps inside me. You know what, Richard? For 16 years, you've been feeding him poison about me. You told him I chose money over family. You told him I was a terrible mother. You turned my son against me systematically and deliberately because you were angry that I became more successful than you. You created this dynamic where the only relationship Dominic and I could have was financial because that's the only role you allowed me to play in his life. And now you have the nerve to call me and demand that I continue playing that role? The role you assigned me? The ATM mother who exists only to write checks? Eleanor, that's not. I'm not finished. You never offered to pay a single dollar toward this wedding. Not $1. You make $800,000 a year and you didn't contribute anything because you assumed I would pay for everything like I always do. You enabled your son to become a man who thinks it's acceptable to treat women, specifically his own mother, with complete contempt as long as she's useful financially. Congratulations, Richard. You raised him exactly the way you wanted. You're being completely irrational. No, for the first time in 16 years, I'm being completely rational. I'm done, Richard. I'm done being the villain in the story you and Dominic wrote about our family. I'm done paying for the privilege of being disrespected. And I'm especially done taking phone calls from you. I hang up before he can respond. My hands are shaking, but it feels good. It feels right. Within an hour, my phone starts buzzing again. This time, it's a number I don't recognize with a San Francisco area code. I answer it. Is this Eleanor Hartwell? A male voice asks. Yes. Ma'am, this is Jason Miller from Elegance Catering. We provided services for a wedding on June 14th for your son Dominic Hartwell, and we haven't received payment of $32,000. When can we expect payment? And there it is. The vendors are calling me directly now. Mr. Miller, I say calmly, I'm not the client on that contract. Dominic Hartwell is. You'll need to take this up with him. But ma'am, he said his mother was handling all the payments. We never would have provided services worth $32,000 if we'd known payment wasn't secured. That sounds like a difficult situation. However, I don't have a contract with you, and I'm not responsible for promises my son made regarding payment. I suggest you speak with your lawyer about your options for collecting from the actual client. I hang up before he can argue. The same conversation happens 4 more times that day with different vendors. The florist, the photographer, the cake designer, the venue itself. Each time I give the same answer. I'm not the client. I'm not responsible. Take it up with Dominic. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted, but I also feel lighter than I have in years. That evening, I'm at home when my doorbell rings. I'm not expecting anyone. When I check the security camera, my heart sinks. Dominic is standing in the hallway of my building. I stand at my door for a full minute before I open it. Part of me wants to ignore the doorbell, pretend I'm not home, avoid this confrontation entirely. But I didn't build a $12 million company by running from difficult conversations. I open the door. Dominic looks terrible. His hair is unwashed, His eyes are red-rimmed, and he's wearing the same clothes I saw him in through the security camera yesterday, which means he probably slept in them. He flew across the country to confront me in person. That would almost be touching if the circumstances were different. "Mom," he says, and his voice cracks. "We need to talk." I step aside and let him in. My condo is beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, art on the walls from galleries in New York. Everything here represents my success, my independence, my ability to create the life I wanted. Dominic walks into the living room but doesn't sit down. He's pacing, agitated, running his hands through his hair. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," he says, and there's real anguish in his voice. "Do you understand what's happening? The vendors are threatening lawsuits, plural. My credit score is going to be destroyed. Tessa's family is humiliated. Everyone who came to our wedding is asking questions about why the bills aren't being paid. This is destroying my reputation, Mom. My reputation." I sit down on my white sofa and fold my hands in my lap. I feel eerily calm. "Your reputation," I repeat. "That's what you're worried about?" "Of course that's what I'm worried about. I have a business to run. I have investors who trust me. How does it look if I can't even pay my own wedding vendors?" "Dominic," I say quietly, "sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to sit down." Something in my tone makes him stop pacing. He sits on the chair across from me, perched on the edge like he might bolt at any moment. "Do you know how much money I've given you in the last 5 years?" I ask. "That's not relevant. $847,600. That doesn't include the wedding expenses you're currently demanding I pay. If we add those, it's over $1 million in 5 years. He stares at me. "So what? You have $12 million. It's not like you can't afford it." And there it is. That entitlement. That assumption that my money is his money, that I exist as a resource to be extracted from. "You're right," I say. "I can afford it. But the question isn't whether I can afford it. The question is whether you deserve it." "I'm your son," he says, and his voice rises. "You owe me. For all the years you weren't there, for all the soccer games you missed and the school plays you skipped, and the times I needed you and you chose work instead. You owe me, Mom." I nod slowly. "You're right about that too. I wasn't there. I failed you in fundamental ways when you were growing up. I prioritized building my business over being present for you, and that was wrong. I've carried that guilt for 16 years. Then pay for the wedding." "No." He stands up abruptly. "What do you mean, no? You just admitted you failed me." "I did fail you. But Dominic, I've spent 16 years trying to buy forgiveness for those failures. Almost $1 million in 5 years. And do you know how many times in those 5 years you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not because you needed something, just to talk to your mother?" He doesn't answer. "I can't remember a single time," I continue. "Every phone call, every text message, every lunch meeting has been about what you need from me financially. And I told myself that was okay, that at least we were connecting, that generosity was how I showed love. But it wasn't love, Dominic. It was enabling you to use me. That's not fair. You changed the date on my invitation." The words come out flat, emotionless. "You and Tessa deliberately printed a fake invitation with the wrong date so that I would drive 7 hours to be humiliated. You planned that. You executed it. And then 2 days later, you asked me to pay $187,000 for the privilege of being treated that way." His face goes pale. "Tessa said it would be funny. She said you always show up late to everything anyway. So you thought publicly humiliating me was an appropriate response to me missing one engagement dinner? It wasn't just one dinner," he explodes. "It was everything. My entire childhood was you missing things. You were never there, Mom. Never. And then after the divorce, you thought you could just throw money at me and make up for it. Well, guess what? Money doesn't replace a mother." The pain in his voice is real. I can hear the 13-year-old boy who felt abandoned, who needed his mother and didn't have her, and my heart breaks for that boy. But the man standing in front of me isn't that boy anymore. "You're absolutely right," I say. "Money doesn't replace a mother. But the problem is, you've spent 16 years accepting that money while maintaining your anger. You took every dollar I gave you. You cashed every check. You lived in the apartment I bought, drove the car I paid for, ran your company on my investments. And you did all of that while despising me for not being the mother you needed. Because you owed me. Did I owe you cruelty? Did I owe you humiliation? Did I owe you 16 years of being treated like an ATM that occasionally deserves punishment? You're twisting this around. No, Dominic. I'm finally seeing it clearly. I failed as a mother when you were young. That's true. But you became a man who believes that failure gives you lifetime permission to exploit and abuse me. And I enabled that belief by continuing to give you money, no matter how you treated me. Tears are running down his face now. The vendors are going to sue me. I'm going to lose everything. You're 29 years old, I say. You have a Stanford degree. You've raised hundreds of thousands in venture capital for your startup. Tessa comes from a wealthy family, even if they're having financial difficulties. Your father makes $800,000 a year. Between all of you, I'm sure you can figure out how to handle $187,000 in wedding debt. Dad already said he won't help. He says this is your responsibility. Of course he does. He's been telling you for 16 years that everything wrong with our family is my fault. Why would he change now? So, you're just going to let me get sued? You're going to let my life fall apart? I stand up and walk to the window. The harbor is beautiful in the evening light, boats cutting through the water, the city glittering behind me. I love you, Dominic, I say without turning around. I have always loved you. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean allowing you to destroy me financially and emotionally while you punish me for mistakes I made when you were a child. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means allowing people to face the consequences of their actions. You're not my mother, he says, and his voice is filled with venom. A real mother wouldn't do this. I turn to face him. A real son wouldn't have done what you did to me in Napa. But here we are. I'm going to sue you, he says, for breach of promise. You said you'd pay for the wedding. Then sue me. My lawyer is very good, and she'd love to hear you explain in court why you think I should pay for a wedding you deliberately prevented me from attending. He stares at me for a long moment, and I see something shift in his face. He realizes I'm serious. I'm actually not going to give in. You're going to regret this, he says. You're going to lose me forever. And that's when I feel it. The final piece of something breaking inside me, or maybe healing. I'm not sure which. Dominic, I say softly, I lost you 16 years ago when you chose your father over me. I've spent every year since then trying to buy you back. Today, I'm finally accepting the truth. You can't buy love, and you can't earn respect from someone who's determined not to give it. He walks to the door. His hand is on the handle when he turns back. I hope you're happy, he says, alone with all your money. I'm not happy, I tell him honestly. I'm heartbroken. But I'd rather be heartbroken with my dignity intact than keep destroying myself trying to earn love from someone who sees me as nothing more than a bank account. He leaves without another word. The door closes behind him with a soft click. I stand there in my beautiful condo, looking out at the harbor, and I cry. I cry for the little boy who needed me and didn't have me. I cry for the 16 years of trying and failing to fix something that was broken beyond repair. I cry for the relationship we never had and never will have. But underneath the grief, there's something else. Something that feels almost like relief. For the first time in 16 years, I'm not trying to buy my son's love. And somehow, in the strangest way, that feels like freedom. The next morning, I wake up to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most are from numbers I don't recognize, probably more vendors hunting for payment. 3 are from Dominic. 2 are from Richard. And 1 is from a number with a Connecticut area code that I eventually realize must be Tessa's parents. I don't return any of them. Instead, I get dressed for work and I do something I haven't done in months. I actually enjoy my morning routine. I make myself a proper breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee that I drink slowly while reading the news. I choose my favorite navy Tom Ford suit. I take my time with my makeup. When I look in the mirror, I see a woman who slept through the night for the first time in weeks. At the office, Vivian is waiting in my doorway before I've even set down my bag. So, she says, I heard Dominic showed up at your place last night. How did you know that? Your doorman texted my doorman. The Boston doorman network is more efficient than the CIA. She comes in and closes the door. How did it go? About as well as you'd expect. He's threatening to sue me. Let him, Vivian says flatly. Patricia would eat him alive in court. That's what I told him. She studies my face carefully. You look different. Different how? Lighter. Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. She's right. That's exactly how I feel. He told me I'm going to lose him forever, I say. And I told him I lost him 16 years ago. I've just been in denial about it. Vivian comes around my desk and hugs me. She's not usually physically affectionate, which makes it mean more. I'm proud of you, she says quietly. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. The day is busy, which I'm grateful for. Meetings with clients, conference calls with our satellite office in London, a presentation to a potential new account. I'm fully present in all of it in a way I haven't been in months. Without the constant weight of guilt and anxiety about Dominic, my mind is clear, sharp, focused. At 3 in the afternoon, my assistant Margot buzzes me. Eleanor, there's a Patricia Morrison on line 2. She says it's urgent. I pick up immediately. Patricia? We have a problem, my lawyer says without preamble. Or rather, Dominic has a problem and he's trying to make it yours. I just received a cease and desist letter from an attorney representing him. They're threatening to sue you for breach of oral contract, claiming you made a binding promise to pay for the wedding and that his reliance on that promise has caused him significant financial harm. I feel a spike of anger, but push it down. You said they wouldn't actually sue. I said I doubted they would. Apparently I underestimated how desperate he is. But Eleanor, this is actually good news. How is being sued by my own son good news? Because he's making this very easy for us. His lawyer is claiming that your promise to pay constitutes a binding oral contract. For that to hold up, they need to prove that you made an unconditional promise, that Dominic reasonably relied on that promise, and that he changed his position based on that reliance, causing him harm. He did rely on it. He did change his position. That's why he owes the vendors money now. Right. But here's the thing. They also need to prove that there was no fraud or misrepresentation that would invalidate the contract. And you have documented proof that they deliberately deceived you about the wedding date to prevent you from attending. That's fraud, Eleanor. Textbook fraud. The moment they changed that invitation, they invalidated any agreement you might have had. I lean back in my chair. So what do? We respond to their cease and desist with our own letter laying out exactly why their claim has no merit. We include copies of your invitation showing the wrong date, the venue confirmation showing the actual date, and a timeline demonstrating deliberate deception. We make it very clear that if they proceed with a lawsuit, we will not only win, but we will countersue for the emotional distress caused by their fraudulent conduct. Would that actually work? The countersuit? Probably not, but they don't need to know that. The point is to show them that you're not going to roll over and that pursuing this will cost them far more than it's worth. I'm betting once they see the evidence we have, they'll drop it. Do it, I say. After I hang up, I sit in my office for a long time, staring out the window at the Boston skyline. My son is suing me. We've reached the point where lawyers are involved, where legal threats are being exchanged, where whatever shreds of relationship we had left are being burned to the ground. This should devastate me. Instead, I feel strangely calm. My phone rings. It's Richard again. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. What do you want, Richard? I want to understand what the hell is wrong with you. His voice is tight with anger. You're forcing your son to sue you? You're that vindictive? I'm not forcing him to do anything. He made that choice all on his own. Because you left him no alternative. Eleanor, for God's sake, just pay the money. You have it. He doesn't. This is destroying him. Good. The word comes out before I can stop it, and the silence on the other end of the line is absolute. What did you just say? Richard finally asks. I said good. Maybe being destroyed is what he needs. Maybe hitting rock bottom is the only way he'll ever grow up and realize that actions have consequences. You're his mother. I am his mother. My voice rises for the first time. I am his mother. And for 29 years, I've watched him grow into a man who treats women like disposable resources. Who do you think taught him that, Richard? Who modeled that behavior for him his entire childhood? Don't you dare. You treated me like decoration when we were married. You wanted a wife who would smile and look pretty and never challenge you or have ambitions of her own. And when I refused to play that role, you punished me by turning our son against me. You spent 16 years telling him I was selfish, I was cold, I chose money over family. You created the narrative that I owed him something, that my success was somehow stolen from him, that I deserved to be treated with contempt. That's not. And now he's married to a woman who treats him exactly the way you taught him women should be treated, as a financial resource. Tessa doesn't love him, Richard. She loves what she thinks he can provide, or more accurately, what she thinks I can provide through him. You raised a son who thinks it's acceptable to humiliate and exploit his mother, and now you're calling me to demand that I reward that behavior with nearly $200,000? He's facing lawsuits. Then maybe he should call his father for help. You make $800,000 a year. You could pay off those vendors without even feeling it. But you won't, will you? Because in your mind, this is my responsibility. The mother who failed should pay forever. The woman who dared to be successful should be punished endlessly for it. This is insane. No, Richard. For the first time in 16 years, this is sane. I'm done being the villain in your family narrative. I'm done accepting blame for your failures as a father. And I'm especially done taking phone calls from you. I hang up. My hand is shaking so badly I nearly drop the phone. Vivian appears in my doorway within seconds. I heard yelling. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I say, and I realize it's true. I just told my ex-husband exactly what I think of him. How did that feel? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. That evening, I'm at home trying to distract myself with work emails when my phone buzzes with a text from a number I don't have saved. The area code is San Francisco. This is Tessa. We need to talk. I stare at that message for a full minute. My son's wife, the woman who helped orchestrate my public humiliation, wants to talk. Every instinct tells me to delete it and block the number. Instead, I type, "Go ahead. Not over text. Can we video chat?" Against my better judgment, I agree. 30 seconds later, my phone is ringing with a FaceTime call. Tessa's face fills the screen. She looks immaculate as always, blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. But there's something brittle in her expression. "Eleanor," she says, and her voice has none of its usual confidence. "Thank you for taking my call." "What do you want, Tessa?" "I want to explain. About the invitation, about everything. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Really? What was it supposed to be? Just a little harmless humiliation? A small lesson to put me in my place?" She flinches. "It was stupid. I know that now. I was angry about the engagement dinner, and I thought it would be funny to have you show up a day late. I thought you'd be embarrassed for like 5 minutes, and then we'd all laugh about it later, and you'd still pay for everything because you always pay for everything." "And Dominic went along with this?" "He was angry too. You have to understand, Eleanor. He's been hurt by you for so long. Don't," my voice is sharp, "don't justify what you did by blaming my past mistakes. Yes, I failed Dominic when he was young, but I didn't fail you, Tessa. I barely knew you. You made a calculated decision to humiliate me because you saw me as a resource to be exploited, not as a human being." Her eyes fill with tears. They might even be real. "The vendors are calling constantly. We've gotten 3 lawsuit notices. Dominic's credit score has dropped 200 points. My parents are horrified. His friends are asking questions. This is ruining our lives. You ruined your own lives when you decided cruelty was funny. Please," she says, and now the tears are falling. "I'm begging you. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but does one mistake really deserve this level of punishment?" "One mistake?" I repeat slowly. "Tessa, this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to send an invitation. A mistake is getting a date wrong accidentally. What you did was deliberate fraud. You and Dominic created a fake invitation with a false date specifically to ensure I would drive 7 hours to be humiliated. You recorded me. You posted about it on social media. You laughed with your friends about teaching me a lesson. That's not a mistake. That's calculated cruelty. We took the posts down after I saw them, after they'd been shared and screenshot and spread around. Do you know how many people have sent me those images? Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to have strangers witness your own son treating you that way? She's sobbing now. We're going to lose everything. The apartment, our credit, Dominic's reputation. His startup investors are getting nervous. Everything is falling apart. Then maybe you should have thought about consequences before you acted. How can you be so cold? She asks through her tears. You're his mother. Mothers are supposed to forgive. They're supposed to love unconditionally. And there it is, that word, unconditionally. Let me tell you something about unconditional love, I say, and my voice is steady despite the emotion building in my chest. Unconditional love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean allowing yourself to be exploited and humiliated with no boundaries. I do love my son unconditionally. I love him enough to let him face the consequences of his actions, because that's the only way he might actually grow into a better person. What you're asking for isn't unconditional love. You're asking for unconditional tolerance of cruelty, and I'm done providing that. So that's it? You're just going to let us suffer? You're not going to suffer, Tessa. You might have to downsize your lifestyle. You might have to sell the apartment I paid for. You might have to get actual jobs instead of playing startup entrepreneur with my money. But you're not going to starve. You're not going to be homeless. You're just going to have to live like normal 20-something newlyweds instead of like trust fund babies. Dominic says he's never speaking to you again. The words hit harder than I expect them to, even though I knew they were coming. That's his choice, I managed to say. I'll be here if he ever wants a real relationship, one built on mutual respect instead of financial transactions. But I won't be here to be used and abused anymore. You're going to regret this, Tessa says, her tears drying up suddenly, replaced by cold anger. When you're old and alone, and you realize you threw away your only child over money, you're going to regret this so much. Maybe, I say, but I'll regret it with my dignity intact. Can you say the same? I end the call before she can respond. I sit there in my living room, phone in my hand, and I wait for the breakdown. I wait for the overwhelming grief, the second-guessing, the desperate urge to call them back and fix everything with my checkbook like I always have. But it doesn't come. Instead, what I feel is tired, bone-deep tired from 16 years of fighting for crumbs of affection from people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet. Tired of being the villain in a story someone else wrote. Tired of apologizing for my success and my choices while accepting cruelty as my due punishment. I pour myself a glass of wine, and I open my laptop. I pull up my will, the one I had drafted 5 years ago that leaves everything to Dominic. I read through it slowly, looking at the clauses that would give my son millions of dollars upon my death. No strings attached, no conditions, just unconditional financial love from beyond the grave. Then I call Patricia Morrison. I need to change my will, I tell her. Okay, she says carefully. What kind of changes? Everything. I need to change everything. We talk for over an hour. When we're done, I have a plan. 70% of my estate will go to a foundation I'm creating to support women entrepreneurs from working-class backgrounds, women like I was once. 20% will go to Vivian, who has been more family to me than my own blood. And 10% will go into a trust for Dominic, accessible only when he turns 40 and only if he completes documented therapy to address his relationship with money and family. It's not punishment. It's hope. Hope that maybe, someday, he'll do the work to become the man he could be instead of the man his father raised him to be. After I hang up with Patricia, I do one more thing. I open my email and I write a letter to Dominic. I write everything I've never been able to say. About my failures as a young mother. About the guilt I've carried. About how much I love him and how much it hurts that love wasn't enough. About how I hope someday he understands that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're necessary for any healthy relationship. I write that sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is stop enabling her child's worst impulses. I write that I'll always be here if he wants a real relationship, but that relationship can't be built on exploitation. I write that I forgive him, even if he never forgives me. Then I save it in my drafts folder. I'm not ready to send it yet. Maybe I never will be, but writing it helps somehow. That night, I sleep better than I have in years. 3 months pass before I hear from Dominic again. In those 3 months, a lot happens. Patricia sends our response to his lawyers cease and desist. complete with all the evidence of the fraudulent invitation. We never hear back. The lawsuit threat disappears as quickly as it appeared, which tells me his lawyer probably took one look at the documentation and advised him he had no case. The vendors continue calling for a while, but eventually they figure out they're not getting money from me. I hear through mutual acquaintances that Dominic and Tessa sold the condo I bought for them. The sale covered most of the wedding debt, though apparently they took a loss because they had to sell quickly. They moved into a studio apartment in a less fashionable neighborhood. Dominic's startup laid off half its staff, including him. Tessa got a job at a boutique PR firm, which must be quite an adjustment for someone who spent the last 2 years as a full-time Instagram influencer. Richard called me once, drunk, at 2 in the morning. He rambled for 20 minutes about how I'd ruined Dominic's life, how I was a terrible mother, how history would judge me harshly. Then, in a moment of unexpected honesty, he admitted that he'd spent 16 years poisoning Dominic against me because he was angry that I'd become wealthier than him after the divorce. He said watching me succeed felt like a personal insult, proof that he'd been wrong about me and he couldn't stand it. So he made sure Dominic saw my success the same way, as something stolen from them, something that should have been theirs. I didn't say anything. I just listened until he ran out of words, and then I hung up. I haven't heard from him since. The email from Dominic comes on a Tuesday morning in late September. The subject line is just one word: Mom. I stare at it for 5 minutes before I open it. Mom, it begins. I don't know how to start this letter. I've written it a dozen times and deleted it every time because nothing sounds right. But my therapist says I need to at least try. So here I am, trying. You were right about a lot of things. Not everything, but a lot. We did change your invitation on purpose, Tessa's idea originally, but I went along with it, which makes it my responsibility too. We thought it would be funny. We thought you deserved it for missing the engagement dinner. We didn't think about what it would actually feel like for you, and we definitely didn't think you'd ever stop paying for things. That was stupid. That was cruel. I'm sorry. I'm also sorry for the 16 years before that, for taking your money while treating you like an ATM, for never just calling to talk, for holding on to anger from when I was 13 and using it as an excuse to punish you forever, for letting Dad turn me against you without ever questioning if his version of events was the whole truth. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy. Twice a week. Tessa and I are in couples counseling too, though I don't know if the marriage is going to survive. Turns out, when you build a relationship on materialism and resentment, it doesn't hold up well when the money runs out. Who knew? I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I'm not asking you to pay our debts or save my startup or fix my life. I'm writing because my therapist asked me what I actually want from you, and I realized I don't know. I've spent so long being angry at you for what you weren't that I never thought about who you actually are. You built something incredible from nothing. You came from poverty and made yourself into a success through pure determination. You're brilliant at what you do. You've helped hundreds of companies succeed. You employ 60 people who depend on you. Those are all things I should have admired instead of resented. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet. Maybe I never will. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to become someone better than who I've been. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No expectations, no demands, just talking. Dominic. I read the email 3 times. Then I close my laptop and I cry. Not the angry tears I cried in Napa or the grief-stricken tears I cried after he left my condo. These are different. These are tears of release, of something heavy finally shifting. I don't respond to the email immediately. I sit with it for 3 days, thinking about what I want to say, what I need to say, what's actually helpful to say. Finally, I write back. Dominic, thank you for your email. I know it took courage to send it, and I appreciate your honesty. You're right that I built a successful business, but you're also right that I failed as a mother in fundamental ways when you were young. I prioritized work over presence, achievement over connection, and by the time I realized what I'd lost, you'd already made your choice about where you belonged. I've carried guilt about that for 16 years, and I probably always will. But you're also right that I should have stopped enabling your resentment with money. I thought I was showing love, but what I was actually doing was allowing you to avoid dealing with legitimate pain from childhood. We were both stuck in a cycle that neither of us knew how to break. I'm glad you're in therapy. I'm in therapy too now, working through my own issues around using financial generosity as a substitute for emotional availability. It's hard work, but it's necessary work. I don't know what a relationship between us looks like going forward. I don't know if we can build something real after 16 years of dysfunction, but I'm willing to try if you are, with one condition. It has to be built on honesty and mutual respect, not money and guilt. That means I'm not going to invest in future business ventures or help with financial emergencies or provide safety nets. Not because I don't love you, but because I love you enough to let you stand on your own feet. You're 29 years old with a Stanford education and real talent. You don't need my money. You never did. But if you want a mother who will listen when you need to talk, who will celebrate your real successes, who will be there emotionally in the ways I wasn't when you were young, then I'm here. Always. The ball is in your court. Love, Mom. I send the email before I can second-guess myself. 6 weeks later, Dominic calls me. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. We speak for 20 minutes about his new job working for someone else's startup, about his therapy, about how weird it is to live in a studio apartment after years in a luxury condo. It's awkward and stilted, and there are long pauses where neither of us knows what to say. But it's also the most honest conversation we've had in 16 years. We don't talk about the wedding. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about his father or the past, or who was right and who was wrong. We just talk. At the end of the call, he says, "Can I call you again next week?" "I'd like that," I tell him. After I hang up, I sit in my office looking out at Boston Harbor. The same view I've had for years, but somehow it looks different now. Lighter, more hopeful. Vivian comes in without knocking, which means she knows something significant just happened. "Well?" she asks. "He called. We talked. He's going to call again next week. How do you feel?" I think about that question carefully. How do I feel? Cautiously optimistic, I finally say. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship I always wanted, but maybe we can have something real, something built on truth instead of transactions. That's all anyone can ask for, Vivian says. She's right. That evening, I do something I haven't done in months. I cook myself a real dinner, not takeout or something grabbed between meetings. I make pasta from scratch, a recipe my mother taught me when I was young, before I became obsessed with success and security. I pour myself good wine. I eat slowly, savoring every bite. My phone sits silent on the counter. No demanding calls from vendors, no angry texts from Dominic or Richard, no crisis that requires my immediate financial intervention. Just silence. Peaceful, calm silence. I think about the woman I was 3 months ago, driving 7 hours to a wedding she wasn't invited to attend, still desperately trying to buy love from someone who saw her as nothing but a resource. That woman was successful by every external measure, but she was hollow inside, defined entirely by guilt and the endless attempt to compensate for it. I think about the woman I am now, still successful, still wealthy, still carrying some guilt about the past, but no longer hollow, no longer defined by other people's narratives about who I should be and what I owe. I don't know if Dominic and I will ever be truly close. I don't know if he'll do the work necessary to become the man he could be. I don't know if this fragile new connection we're building will survive. But I do know this. I'm no longer willing to destroy myself trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it. I'm no longer willing to accept abuse as payment for past mistakes. I'm no longer willing to be anyone's ATM, their villain, their scapegoat. I'm just Eleanor, a woman who came from nothing, built something extraordinary, made serious mistakes along the way, and finally learned that the only person whose forgiveness really mattered was her own. The next morning, I wake up, and the first thing I feel isn't guilt. It's peace. And that, I realize, is worth more than any amount of money I could have spent trying to buy what can't be bought. Some things have to be earned. Some things have to be given freely. And some things have to be released entirely before anything real can grow in their place. I don't know what the future holds for me and my son, but I know I'll face it standing upright, with my dignity intact, and that's more than I could have said 6 months ago. Sometimes the greatest act of love is learning when to stop giving. Sometimes the strongest thing a mother can do is set her child free to succeed or fail on their own terms. And sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save everyone else first. I'm finally learning those lessons. And somehow, despite everything, that feels like hope.